Hello, this is Ian Noel Camalotis for Centertainment Media, and welcome to Here At. Here we are again, here at the AMC River East Theater in downtown Chicago, not too far from Navy Pier, and we're here to check out the annual Chicago International Film Festival. The Chicago International Film Festival is North America's longest running competitive film festival, and it's entering its 53rd year this year, with a lot of variety of movies coming from all over the world. We've got a lot of films from across the country, from different countries. We even have a lot of films that are filmed locally here in Chicago. We're hoping to see what we can check out this year. We've got some films in line, such as Princess Sid and Rogers Park, two of the films that were filmed by filmmakers here in Chicago. We also have a short film, which we don't get a chance to talk about too much, The Replacement, which is part of the shorts in City and State. Hopefully we'll be able to check that out and see what else we can learn about that. Other films that are in line this year that we're hoping to see are Tokyo Vampire Hotel, which is by filmmaker Sion Sono, who's already had his film Tag featured here last year at the Chicago International Film Festival. We've got, for closing night, The Shape of Water, which is Guillermo del Toro's film, premiering here at the Chicago International Film Festival on closing night. So we've got a lot of different films we're going to be checking out. We're going to see what we can check out, see if there's any things we can learn about these films, any events we can check out, and bring it to you guys here. So let's see what we've got this year.
So I'm very pleased to announce that the Chicago Award goes to Princess Sid, directed by Stephen Cohn. Princess Sid won for its clear tonality, lyrical storytelling, and graceful authenticity.
So, but it all originated, there's an author I love a lot named Marilynne Robinson, and I've always thought, what if Marilynne Robinson had a niece who was very different from her and not intellectual, very physically driven? What would happen if they were in the same home, So that's where it came from. It was just this idea of this author and being challenged, I guess, in some way by a younger person. So yeah, that's sort of what it was.
And our top prize goes to a film that truly impressed the jury. The Silver Hugo for Best Animated Short Film goes to Airport by Michaela Mueller. From the jury, great art can make you feel like you are living an experience. Watching Airport gave us all the sensation that we were in that space. A film that takes us to a place we don't want to go in the most kinetic sensual way possible. An ominous, topical film that is never heavy-handed.
Now, here at the Chicago International Film Festival, there are movies from all across the world as well as all across the country here in the U.S. One of the biggest focuses at the Chicago International Film Festival when it comes to U.S. films is the city and state, which are any films made by filmmakers that either reside in the Chicagoland area or across the state of Illinois, or have films that are filmed here. So this year, I wanted to make this a focus for us and explore some of these films which we haven't even been able to look at in previous years. We're going to have a mix of both some of the full-length feature films, including some of the ones that are in the competitions, and we'll also take a look at one of the films that is featured in the city and state short subject portion. So hello again. I'm here with Stephen Cohen, the director of the film Princess Sid, here at the Chicago International Film Festival. First of all, I wanted to start off by congratulating you. This is you won the Hugo Award for the Chicago one.
Award, yes,
yeah. And then this is the second award you've won, because you won one a couple years ago. What was the name of that film again?
That was Henry Gamble's birthday party, and we won the Silver Q Hugo Award that year, so that was very cool.
You must be one of the popular filmmakers here, especially with just a couple movies.
I mean, I'm a hometown filmmaker. I've been making movies here for 10 years, so yeah. So the audiences sort of build up over time. If you're in a certain place for long enough, you do decent work, then people, you meet friends and they continue to support you. So it's cool.
Okay. Well, so tell us a little bit more about Princess Sid, because I know some people might not have been able to see it yet, or just a general summary of what it's about.
Yeah, sure. It's about a young 16-year-old girl from South Carolina who is the daughter of a single father, and she needs a little break from South Carolina, so she's sent off to go visit her famous novelist aunt in Chicago. So it's nothing more than just a couple of weeks in Chicago, a niece visiting her aunt, very much sort of like a female bonding, kind of Summer's Tale, and she encounters and falls for a barista, and so there's like sexual exploration and discovery, and also just also generational aunt and niece, two entirely different people, sort of, I guess, in subtle ways teaching each other what they love and how they live, and hopefully they affect each other in nice ways.
So what got you into filmmaking, and what drew you to this kind of art?
I was a lifelong lover of movies, but I wasn't a film student. I was a theater major, so I started out as an actor, and then around 2005 I started just kind of putting myself through my own film school. So I'm completely self-taught. I've made more or less one movie per year, whether a short or a feature, for the last 10 years. And I've had a very slow kind of learning process. I've never taken a film class. I've never taken a screenwriting class. So it's all been about kind of growing and figuring out what I'm doing on my own.
Gotcha. And then all these ideas are just ideas that you come up with yourself for the films you do?
Yeah, it's a mood, it's a character. It's very rarely plot, because plot is not the first on my list of priorities, as you know because you saw the film. It's usually just kind of a type of movie I want to make, or the feeling, or if I want to capture an environment or a city. It starts like that, and then I just explore and figure out how to do it on a lower budget, and that's how it usually results.
And one last thing, especially for the audience too, especially since you're self-taught, which is something I actually really admire, because most of the time you hear filmmakers, I went through all these years of school, had to wait this.
Years of school.
So what advice do you have for anyone that wants to get into filmmaking, whether they want to go through school or whether they want to try going the route you did?
Absolutely. I think honestly, whether you go to film school or not, you should just start making stuff. And the most important thing towards making stuff is setting the date and not pushing. A lot of people like to say, I'm going to shoot in the summer, and then they get to summer and they're like, oh, we're not ready yet, so we're going to push to next year. And then they get to next year and they say, we're not ready yet, we're going to push to next year. Cut to they're 60 years old and have never made a movie. So you have to just it's never going to be the ideal time to make a movie. Just make your thing. Like, just make it no matter who shows up, and just make sure you have a camera. If you can turn it on, you can make a movie, right? And if it sucks, then move on to the next one.
I'm here with both the writer and the director of the movie Rogers Park, which is a neighborhood here in Chicago. So could you guys both introduce yourselves?
Sure, I'm Kyle Henry. I'm the director.
I'm Carlos Trevino. I'm the writer of Rogers Park.
So this film's here at the Chicago International Film Festival. There's a huge push for city and state films. What made you guys come up with the story, especially you as the writer, that kind of a story of the two different interracial couple relationships?
Well, actually, I think it started with the production idea. We wanted to talk about our neighborhood. We've lived in Rogers Park for about 8 years now, and in fact, it's the only place we've lived since coming to Chicago. And we wanted to center it around our neighborhood. We really appreciate the diversity of the neighborhood. We really appreciate the sort of middle class life, and it's a real cross section of Chicago, I feel like, and the kinds of people who live here. So knowing that we wanted to do a slice of life film about Chicago, Rogers Park seemed the perfect place.
But could you tell us a little bit more about the story?
Sure. It's a story about two midlife couples. They're in their 40s. They're both interracial couples, African American and white. And it's like we said, it's a slice of life film. It's a relationship film about these two couples, and they're also linked by having a brother and a sister as one of each of the couples. So,
And I think it's also about the problems that people face in the second great coming of age. We see a ton of stories about 18 to 22-year-olds. Well, guess what? There's another huge coming of age that occurs around 45 to 50, where you have to say, the dreams of the past have now changed. Who am I going to be to the future? And the end is closer than the beginning. And I think you either sink or swim at that point of life, and that also can sink or swim a relationship. So you see two couples, one dealing with it perhaps surprisingly well, and one to disastrous consequences, not dealing with this change very well. So yeah, that's what the film's about. I would say too, to be a filmmaker, you have to make films. So use any opportunity you can and use your resources wisely. Don't go into a huge amount of credit card debt. Speaking from past experiences, that's not going to help you make your next film.
Now, the film The Replacement is a short subject film, part of the Shorts #1, which is shorts that are made by filmmakers here in the Chicagoland area and the state of Illinois. This film is made by Sean Miller and talks about how clones are a regular thing in the future, and how now they have equal rights, and how that affects people who are the originals of these clones. We got a chance to take a look at the film and also get to speak with the director himself to learn a little bit more about the film. Hello again, this is Ian Noel Camalotis for Centertainment Media, and I'm here at the Chicago International Film Festival with filmmaker Sean Miller, who is the director of the short film The Replacement. So could you tell us a little bit more about the film, just in general?
Sure. So The Replacement is a sci-fi political thriller. It's a bit of also a little bit of a satire, and it's set in a world where clones are a very everyday occurrence, a new social trend going on. And our film is set in election night when the first clone has been elected president, and his natural-born original, the guy it's all been based off of, is stuck in a dead-end blue-collar job, kind of wondering how it all went wrong, and all of his clones have become, wildly successful, and he's here cleaning toilets. So that's kind of the premise of the film. Follow your passion, write a movie that you would like to see, but also while you're doing it, think about the resources you have access to. Think of the locations that you have that look cool, would look good on a movie, because those are the things that are going to save you a lot of money to do. And also, actors are huge. Don't just cast your friends. Find people who are good actors, and they'll make your life 100 times better. And always just surround yourself with people who are smarter than you, and learn from them and work with them as much as possible and get experience. That's it.
Here we are now, the chance for me to talk about all the feature-length films that I got a chance to see at the Chicago International Film Festival. I get to rank them from what I like the least to what I like the best, based on many different factors, and get to talk a little bit more about them so that you have an idea of what to expect when you see the films. This year I got a chance to see 16 films at the Chicago International Film Festival, feature-length films. So here we go, let's see how they all rank out. Now, following from the previous movie, Creep 2 is another film where another aspiring filmmaker vlogger takes up an ad on Craigslist and wants to follow this mysterious person who wants to have his life documented over a 24-hour period. Now, just like the first movie, and actually continuing from the first movie, this mysterious man is a serial killer and he wants to have his life documented. What makes this a little different from the previous movie is the fact that this new vlogger is a female who's very fascinated and doesn't seem to be scared of what she wants to film. She wants to push the boundaries. Now, with the way this character is, she is being pushed to her limits, and she's pushing really as far as she can go in terms of wanting to be able to capture this kind of story that she can air online or whatever media that she wants. Now, just like the first film, this is one of those found footage films, which gets to be very tricky, especially in horror films, because this seems to be an overused trope now when it comes to suspense, thriller, and horror. And it's a very hit or miss, because when you have that, you only have one perspective that you're watching. It's not an all-seeing perspective. You're not seeing all the different perspectives. It's just one perspective from one person's set of eyes. And in this film, I feel it works and it doesn't. What makes it work is the fact that you get to really feel the tension and actually see the suspense build up, where you're learning about the subject of the video that the girl wants to make. The thing is, just like a lot of found footage films, not only do you only get one viewpoint, but a lot of things are cut out. A lot of things are very difficult to see, and it's a little bit awkward at times, especially since the conversation is just between the two characters. So the film, if you're a fan of the first one, I would say go check it out. It is an interesting twist compared to the first one. Otherwise, it's one of those, I wasn't as much of a fan, mainly because I can get very picky when it comes to those found footage films, especially with how they're utilized. So this film was a very different and unique film because of the fact that this was an animated film. And at the Chicago International Film Festival, this was their premiere of the English dubbed version of this film. Now, this is based on a graphic novel in Europe, in France, and it tells the story of Angelino, who lives in this California suburb known as Dark Meat City. What's unique about this character is that he's a unique, shape-shifting being. He seems to be normal to everybody else. Everyone doesn't seem to treat him differently. However, when him and his friends begin to be followed by mysterious figures in suits, it becomes this whole chase and whole run through different parts of the California suburbs, of fictitious areas of a California suburb, which put it into this more surreal kind of world because of the fact that you learn about what Angelino's origins are. His best friend is actually a skeleton with a flaming skull head, which is very odd and unique. They're friends with cockroaches. It's a very weird and bizarre kind of graphic novel, and it fits the graphic novel style. The action is fast-paced, but I feel the storyline was a little bit disjointed because they were trying to fit as much of the graphic novel as possible, which is a problem with a lot of graphic novel films or even comic book films, because then when you're throwing in a lot into one compact story, a lot of things can be cut out that makes the story make not too much sense. There are other times where you run into things where everything's rushed and then you're missing out on a lot of parts. So if you're a fan of the graphic novels and have read them, there are no English versions of it yet, but if you're a fan of the English, or if you're a fan actually of the graphic novels and can understand it in English, translating it from its language, do check it out. I don't know. I haven't really read the graphic novel, and I don't know how much the fans would like it. But I felt there was a lot of things that were from the graphic novel that were missing because they were trying to cram so much in the film that they were left out, and it left me kind of confused or even just scratching my head as to where the story really wants to go. So it was okay. I really did like the action scenes, and the animation was very unique. I just had some issues with how the voice acting had been done, and also just the direction of how they wanted the film to go, since, again, there was a lot of things that were thrown into it. Now, Harpoon tells the story of Herman and Kata, which is this relationship between this very strict authoritarian principal and this very rebellious, out of control teenager. And they clash quite a bit in terms of their lives. Herman wants to hold a very strict hold on the students to make sure that there's no misbehaving, nothing goes wrong under his watch. And Kata is very rebellious, very really like out there, kind of those children or teenagers that are acting out. And it's not till an accident happens that causes them to come together, get to really know each other, but in the end, it becomes to be one of those dire consequences for one of the characters. I did like the acting. One of the things that is common a lot of times in these films at the Chicago International Film Festival is films that don't feature too much music. They just let the background sounds and the talking actually tell the story. I did like the story quite a bit, but there were a lot of quiet moments too, which did really get you to think, but at times the story seemed to drag on quite a bit. Other times it seemed to be moving so fast that in just one or two scenes you've progressed the story so much, which, again, with that stop and go, can leave the story a little bit disjointed. Like I said, I like the acting. I did like the general premise of the story, but for the most part, it's one of those, like, it was an okay film. Now, this film is kind of a unique, thought-provoking film which looks at just the decisions people make in relationships. You've got the main character who leaves South Korea to go to Germany and spend some time in Europe just to unwind and get away from an affair that she had with a married man. And when he turns her down eventually and the relationship goes south, she runs away just to escape all that. When she returns back to South Korea and meets up with friends, she has this constant contemplative thought on relationships and how she truly feels about them. And a lot of times it's featured on, as the title says, being at the beach at night alone. And you see that constantly throughout. We always keep going back to the beach, especially at nighttime, over and over again. She seems to be drawn just to that. And this contemplative thought that she has going throughout, just, again, rewinding in terms of what she thinks about what decisions she made in her relationships are one of the key focal points of the film. And as nice as it is, the film does feel like it's dragging on. It's very dialogue heavy, and also a lot of times where it can be quiet times just for reflective in terms of the scenery, in terms of the backgrounds. And the film isn't bad, but at times it's really for the patient filmmaker who's more into artsy kind of films, because it is a very dragging film, again, focused just more on dialogue. There's not much action, there's not much changing from scene to scene. It's just long, drawn out scenes with dialogue, a lot of times just from a wide view, just so you could see all the characters and view all their different reactions to the dialogue. Like I said, if you're a patient film goer and are a little bit more on the artsy side, do check this film out. Now, this is a very unique film about a mother who leaves her husband and son behind in China to pursue her dreams in France. Unfortunately, things don't turn out as the way she had hoped, and she has to resort to other means of support just to be able to continue living in Europe and trying to chase her dreams. And it becomes this kind of routine where she doesn't want to seem like a failure, so she shows all this kind of happiness and tries to put off this, like, she's succeeding in life to her family back home, when in reality she is struggling. It gets to a point where she is forced to go into prostitution or to do very odd jobs that she is not happy with, just to be able to support herself and try to hopefully reach her dreams. It's not until her sister-in-law joins in to help her in Europe where the lies start to unravel, and eventually this kind of web that of lies that she's created just to show that she seems to be supported and she seems to be succeeding is not as strong as what she puts it off to be. There's a lot of dialogue. There's barely, if anything, any kind of music in the film. It is very built on just listening to the noise and the sounds of the characters in terms of what they're saying, at times the emotion that they're putting out. It is, again, one of those slow-paced films. However, there's not too much in terms of what you need to get from it because everything seems to be just more repeated and then focused on. It is a nice film. I did like the acting quite a bit. It just like a lot of the films at the Chicago International Film Festival, these are not geared for Hollywood audiences, so there is some sort of path where this film goes where it doesn't necessarily have a happy ending, but it's not really a sad ending per se either. It's not good. I don't want to say it's terrible, but it's not a good ending in terms of what happens with the characters in the end. All in all, though, I did like the film. It is very well acted, and it's something if you get a chance to check out. Again, the pacing is a little bit slow, so do take your time when you're watching this. Now, this is a big film that takes place in Italy, especially around this small community of more of the poorer folk in this Italian city. And it follows Pio, who is a 14-year-old boy who wants to aspire to be like his rough-edged, take control of his life older brother. His older brother is known for doing a lot of mischievous things, including theft, a lot of kind of rough-edge kind of things in terms of stealing, spying, and all that stuff. And he wants to be like him. He wants to show that he is an adult, especially when his family gets harassed constantly by the police. And with the way this film is, it's one of those unique coming-of-age stories which is not built to just appeal to kids. As a matter of fact, I feel this coming-of-age story is more of an adult film than anything else because you've got the main character more focused on trying to be an adult, doing these more adult things, and then really throughout the film starting to decide what kind of adult he truly wants to be. Again, from the mind of Sion Sono comes this crazy, bizarre, and actually more original story about two warring vampire clans, and one of them having this power over the other, and also having this hotel which feeds on the souls of human beings. The human race is on the verge of an apocalyptic event. Meanwhile, these two warring vampires' families actually clash, and right in the middle of it, you've got one main character who is the focus of both these clans and holds the key to one clan winning over the other. You've got another main character who is there not only to save the first main character, but also has her own storyline, which then becomes more involved when it comes to the warring family clans. And it seems similar, almost like in Nightmare on Elm Street, where you have one main character and then everything shifts over to another one. This is how this film goes. You've got one main character that you follow. You are focused on her survival, and then it shifts on to this other main character. It is a very long film, and from my understanding, the film was supposed to be aimed as hopefully a film series, if not a TV series. It looks like it may become a TV series in Japan. If you want to check it out, do check it out. I think it'd be best to wait to see how the series turns out as opposed to waiting it for as a film, because it is feels like a very long film. It feels like there's a lot involved into it, and it also feels like there are a few things that drag it out to a point where it's like it's hard to keep track of everything that's going on. It was a fun film, but if you're aware or have seen any Sion Sono films, his films go off the deep end real quick, and this film is no exception. Now here's a film that talks about this one character who's preparing a transformation of themselves to a specific gender, but they actually don't have a firm grasp as to who they truly are inside. So their psychiatrist has told this main character to write down each day what gender they feel, and a lot of this is just more dialogue interaction every day as to what this character feels like and who the character feels they are throughout the film. Similar to some of the other films in the film festival that I've already talked about already, this film is very dialogue heavy. There's not too much music really at all, and it's just more focused on just listening to the dialogue, letting a lot of quiet moments play out so that you get to feel and think a lot about what's going on in the film. It does have, it's a very quick, shorter story, so to speak, but it does have this sense of dragging on and wanting to really focus on thinking about putting yourself in that character's shoes and trying to see what decisions you would make and how you feel. Because every day we wake up, we may feel that we're the same person, but what do you feel like today? Do you feel like this type of person? Do you feel like this type of person? This story has that same thing with this main character, except it's more of a gender issue. And in the end, they leave it up as an open story in terms of what direction this character wants to go, and you can make up your own decisions based on how you see the film, a lot of the dialogue that plays out through it. Like I said, it does feel like it's a very long movie, even though it's quite a bit shorter and simpler kind of a story, because there's very little music, there's not too much action, and again, it's very dialogue heavy. So do check it out. It's a fairly good film. I just feel that, again, if you're not a patient film goer, this might not be the film for you. If you're used to film festival films, especially international films, this was one of the films by a Chicago filmmaker made in Chicago that I was able to watch, and it's a film that I feel you could check out, especially if you're a traditional film festival goer. So this is technically the third Japanese film at the film festival I saw this year, which I believe is the most amount of Japanese films I've seen in one year at the film festival. And this story is a simple story of a body snatcher kind of alien invasion kind of film, but more on a comedic and dramatic sort of way, because you have these three aliens who are sent down to Earth as scouts and inhabit the bodies of three random humans. And what their goal is to find each other and be able to send a signal, after learning about the human race, send a signal to their race to prepare for the invasion. Throughout the film, you've got the aliens meeting up with what they call as guides, humans that they reveal this secret that they have, and trying to understand and learn more about the human race while trying to find each other. What is very unique about this is this alien invasion doesn't seem to be more of like a threat. It could be the end of the human race, but it's more of the end of the human race as we know it, as these aliens seem to be more of the taking over our bodies and trying to live out our lives. Not too much is talked about in terms of what they will plan to do with the invasion, other than the fact that they will invade and conquer and take over the human race. Other than that, just the interactions these aliens have with human beings and trying to learn and understand the meaning of certain words, the meaning of certain feelings, and emotions, the meaning of certain actions is prominent throughout the film. And you also have government agents who seem to be aware of this impending alien invasion, trying to hunt them down as well. I think the biggest focus on it is just the aliens trying to learn and understand human emotion and human understanding, what makes us human, and that's a very prominent thing throughout the film. I feel it's a very fun film because there's a lot of comedic moments, there's a lot of action moments, there's a lot of suspenseful moments, It's a very fun film, and it's been one of the Japanese films that I've had the most fun with in a long while. If you get a chance to check it out, do check it out. Again, the film is Before They Vanish, alien invasion movie, one of the fun sci-fi films that I saw at the film festival this year. Now, the film Rogers Park is a film that I saw at the Chicago International Film Festival that's part of the City and State. So another one of these films that I was able to see at the Chicago International Film Festival that takes place, is filmed by Chicago filmmakers or was filmed in Chicago. And what is very interesting about this film is it actually features two Chicago actors, Antoine McKay and Sarah Savini from Empire fame. And this film talks about two different interracial couples living in the Rogers Park area, which is in the north side of Chicago. And it talks about how the relationships are, the ups and downs on the relationships, how each other's relationships affect each other, but also the differences between the two relationships and what they're going through and how they solve everything. It goes through the start where you have the relationships established, all the way through what happens in the future and what the outcome is. I really like the acting of this kind of series. This movie has these two couples be able to tell their stories without mixing too much in there where you're not focused on one or the other. You get to really explore these two different couples, and I felt the acting was done very well. You've got two different couples which really make you think that they are in a true relationship and also are going through a lot of the ups and downs on it. It's a very good drama. If you get a chance to see it, hopefully you'll be able to see it in a theater near you, or hopefully you'll be able to see it on a streaming network. Do check it out. It is a film that I do enjoy. I did get a chance to talk with the writer and the director of the film, and it's one of those that made me open my eyes even more as to why they chose to do a film like this, and why they chose the area, and what made them have these two couples be as different and as diverse as they are in the film. If you get a chance to check it out, do watch it. The film again is Rogers Park. Now this is a suspense thriller film with some supernatural kind of tendencies to it, and we finally get to one of these films where you get this sense of horror, so to speak, because there's been a few films over the years that I've seen at the Chicago International Film Festival that brought you some sort of sense of suspense and horror, not just suspense thriller, but some horror into it, because there's films like Babadook. I saw the original first Paranormal Activity at the Chicago International Film Festival, which was the very first film I saw. So the story of Four Hands has a lot of that same elements to it, and talks about this one girl who, after an accidental death of her sister, is starting to have these kind of blackouts where she doesn't know what's going on, especially since she's the only last remaining member of her family, because both her and her older sister witnessed the murder of her parents when they were young and were able to hide. And now you come to the time where the murderers of their parents are released on parole. It's been many years now and they're released on parole, and this one sister is starting to have these blackouts. She doesn't know what she's doing, where she's going. She ends up waking up in the weirdest places that she doesn't even recognize, and she ends up wanting to do research as to what's going on with her. Is she sleepwalking? Is she turning into something else? Is something taking over her mind? Is there a vengeful spirit within her? She doesn't know. And throughout the film, it's one of those races against time to find out what's going on with her before she ends up doing something that she will truly regret. If you get a chance to see it, this is a very good film. I liked it. I like the suspense. I like the build to it. And it's one of those films that really kept me on the edge of my seat. So if you get a chance to check out Four Hands, do check out Four Hands. Now this is a biopic about this famous Polish gynecologist, Michalina Wisłocka. and her 30-year fight to have her book published. She had to deal with the censors of the government as well as the Catholic Church trying to prevent her from having her book published. And you get to see the fight that she had to do over 30 years in terms of opening sexuality to the whole country and being able to explore relationships even more. This book about relationships and sexuality. And this film talks about her life and her experiences with it. The way this film is structured, though, is a lot of times it goes back and forth between the past and the present, and that can get a little disjointed at times. It's very tricky to have a film where you go back and forth in a timeline, and it's not like these are just, here's the present time and we're doing flashbacks. These are literally in the order of the film, the timeline of the film, going back and forth in time. I felt the film was done very well. The acting was done great. They were able to pull off the bouncing back and forth between timelines. And if you're familiar with the main character and what this biopic is about, it is a film I would recommend that you check out. Otherwise, do check out the film. This is a very good film. You get to learn a little bit more about this historical figure. And yeah, I mean, pacing was great, the acting was great, I like the story, and if you get the chance, do check it out. Here we are again with another film from the Chicago International Film Festival that's part of the City and State category. This film was filmed in Chicago by a Chicago filmmaker. I got a chance to talk with the director, and this film actually won the award for City and State. Now, this is a film that talks about a girl who is sent from North Carolina to Chicago by her father to be able to meet with her aunt and get to know her aunt, especially since this is the sister of her mother who she no longer has in her life. Her mother was murdered when she was young, and it's more of, here's the lifestyle that she would have gotten with her mom still being alive, get to know a little bit more about her mom's personality and also her aunt's personality, and they get to see both the aunt and Sid herself get to learn a little bit more about life in each other's shoes. And while at the same time too, it's more of an exploration for Sid, because then she meets this barista that she starts to fall in love with and opens up even her sexuality in terms of falling in love with this other girl. As the film progresses, both her and her aunt become more open to newer experiences and start learning about being open about life. And it's a very nice film. It deserved the award that it got at the Chicago International Film Festival. Stephen Cohn is the director of this film, and he's won already the Hugo Award for Henry Gamble's Party, which is another film he had at the Chicago International Film Festival in previous years. So this is already his second award, and awarding Princess Sid this award for City and State is truly deserved, and it's a very good film. So if you get a chance to check it out, do watch the film. It's a very fun and good film, and it's more of a coming of age and more of a relationship kind of story between two generations and how they learn to understand each other. This is a film from Finland that talks about Anna, who is this small town girl who finally meets her long lost half sister Angela, and after finally reconnecting with her, decides to go on an adventure to live life with Angela. As the bond between the two grow and they start to bring up memories of when they were growing up and when they got a chance to grow up, their bond becomes stronger to a point where when Anna learns about the predicament that Angela is in, she'll do everything she can to help her half-sister out. I felt this film was very well done. There were a few things that were a little bit questionable in terms of certain parts of the plot, but the suspense, the action, the thrill ride that you're on for this film is very good, and you actually get to enjoy yourself, keep yourself on the edge of your seat, and it's one of those, you get to see this relationship between the two sisters grow to a point where they really depend on each other in terms of not only just life and as family, but also more in terms of how to get each other out in terms of some very tough situations that they end up finding themselves in. If you get a chance to see this finished film, do check it out. Guillermo del Toro does it again by bringing us this fantasy-like story that takes place in somewhat of a real, established real-world place. And this real-world place is actually the United States in the midst of the Cold War around about 1960, 1950, 1960 or so. And tells a story about this girl, Eliza, who is a mute and ends up discovering this government secret of a creature, the sea creature that they find, and she begins to form this bond with it. And that bond is formed more through sign language, as she is, since she's a mute, she cannot talk. And you've got some great performances by the main character, played by Sally Hawkins. You've got Octavia Spencer in there. Michael Shannon's in the film as well. There's a lot of great actors in this film. And this is one of the films I feel you will see as one of the nominees, hopefully, for Best Picture, if not at least Sally Hawkins being nominated for Best Actress in a Lead Role. And I feel that this was a very tough role for her because she barely has any lines. She's playing a mute, so there was a lot of sign language that needed to be involved, and she has to be reacting to a lot of dialogue that's thrown at her. When people speak to her, she has to react, but there's no speaking parts really for her. I think the film was very, very well done. The visuals were great. The story was told very beautifully. And there were a lot of moving parts in the film too. But they kept everything as simple as possible, keeping the story just straightforward. You'll see a lot of the tropes that you would see as a lot of Hollywood films in this type of thing in terms of being able to save a creature. You'll see that a lot in this film, but at the same time too, it's told in a way where it seems very fresh and new. If you get a chance to see this in theaters, especially in the month of December in 2017, do check it out. If not, check it out when it's on DVD, check it out when it's on streaming. And like I said, hopefully this is one of the films that at least gets some nominations for the Academy Awards. And hopefully it wins some. We finally get to the number one film I saw at the Chicago International Film Festival. It wasn't the best, but it was one of the most enjoyable that I had. Very nice, fun film from Australia, talking about a character whose dream is to make his parents proud. This little Muslim boy, part of a Muslim community, whose father is the head honcho at the community center and is one of those people that everyone looks up to. And he wants to follow in his father's footsteps. His father and his mother want him to be a doctor, look forward to him to become a doctor. But when he doesn't do too well on his exam, spoiler alert, he fails. He tells just one small little white lie which snowballs into this big, enormous ball of chaos that puts him on a road and a path to where everything starts to unravel. And for him, really trying to learn about his passion and where his heart truly lies, what he really feels he wants to do in his heart, what he has in his heart that he wants to focus on, is a really nice, heartwarming story. You've seen it in other films before. It's got a lot of Hollywood tropes in it. But what makes this film a little bit unique is the fact that this film is based on a true story. On top of that, the film that has these many actors, the one actor that's unique in the whole film is the actor playing the lead role, which is the person that this film is about. So being able to see this character grow and be played by the person that this story's about is really fulfilling. And it's got a lot of funny moments. Again, there's a lot of tropes that you would see in Hollywood films. It follows kind of a lot of the similar formulas, but it was just fun to see because it was quite a funny film to watch. It had a lot of action, believe it or not. And there were a lot of twists and turns that you would have to follow as the character follows down this path from the beginning of the story to the end. And it is very interesting to see how this film unwinds and unfolds throughout. I didn't even feel the film was long. I was just so invested in the film. It was a lot of fun. If you get a chance to check it out, this was the film I felt was the #1 film I saw at the film festival, mostly because of how well I enjoyed it and how they were able to tell their story. So, well, this is another year here at the Chicago International Film Festival. There were a lot of great movies. We focused a lot on some of the films that were filmed or made by filmmakers here in the Chicagoland area and the state of Illinois. There were a lot of international films we were able to check out, a few people we were able to talk to. And as it is every year, it's been a great, fun year to enjoy the Chicago International Film Festival, especially if you love movies. Well, until next time, this is Ian Noel Camalotis for Centertainment Media, signing off.